Did you know that the Supreme Court said that our institutions are emphatically Christian? Did you realize that the Supreme Court stated our laws and our institutions must necessarily be based on and must include the teachings of the Redeemer of mankind, talking about Jesus? Interesting, isn't it? Well, now let's go to some of the historical examples that the Supreme Court pointed to in American history that they thought proved America was founded as a Christian nation. The first one that we'll look at is the Declaration of Independence. David Barton explains.
Do any of the founding documents show that the founding fathers wanted biblical principles in government? The 1892 Supreme Court said definitely yes. The 1892 Supreme Court went right to the Declaration of Independence to again give another instant, another occasion of where the Christian principles were to be the basis of the nation. They noted the fact that in the Declaration of Independence, 4 times the founding fathers called on God, 4 times they invoked God, 4 times they placed God in the midst of the national birth certificate. Now, the manner in which that happened is an interesting train showing the founding fathers' thinking. For you see, the head of the committee to draft the Declaration had been John Adams, and he personally asked Thomas Jefferson to write the draft of the Declaration. Jefferson did so. When Jefferson returned with that draft, and it listed all the grievances against King George III, and went through 27 grievances that they had against King George III, they were declaring themselves to be free. When they went through, Jefferson had included God only one time. In the preamble, he said, "We're doing this because the laws of nature and nature's God." And that was a well-defined legal term. The founding fathers knew exactly what that meant, as did every other legal scholar in the world, that this is based on biblical principles that we're separating. But when it came out of Jefferson's pen to the committee looked at it and said, wait, there's more in here that God has given us that we need to acknowledge. We need to recognize God in this document. So the committee said, we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. This is not just an arbitrary choice that we're standing up for our rights. We're standing up for the rights that God Himself has given us. That was one of their fundamental principles. God gives the rights, and then government is to protect the rights that God has given. Rights are not given by government, they're given by God. And so they added the phrase that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Now, when it made the floor of Congress, as they came and looked at all the rights that were talked about by the committee, when they came to the final concluding statement, they acknowledged God twice more in that. They said, we've gone through all of these lists of grievances, and now we appeal to the supreme judge of the universe for the rectitude of our intentions, and we now declare ourselves to be free and independent states. And so Congress added that declaration of God in there, that they were relying on God, they wanted God to judge their actions, and they were now declaring themselves to be free. And in the very final sentence, they said, and with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. You see, they opened it acknowledging God, they closed it acknowledging God. Jefferson, now this also indicates the fact that Jefferson's religious views were not typical of the rest of the founding fathers. Jefferson mentioned God one time. The other founders said, no, there's much more that we owe God, and so they acknowledged God 3 more times in that declaration. Now, there were founding fathers, like Jefferson, that did not particularly care whether God was that much of it. But the overwhelming majority of the founding fathers did care, and they're the ones that placed it there. They're the ones that voted it through. The majority, as evidenced by the fact of what passed, wanted God to be the center of their government. The Supreme Court of the United States pointed to the Declaration of Independence as clear proof of the intention of the founding fathers that Christian principles were to remain the basis of our civil government.